Welcome to Max Life Out. My name's Matthew. This is my pain cave, and I'm here to share my passion about cycling and all things related to cycling. In this video, this is my review of the InsideRide E-Flex Rocker system. If you've seen my previous videos, I did an unboxing of this unit, and I also did a how to put it together. This is my personal opinion of my experience with the system. Before we get started, if you like this video, please think about giving me a thumbs up and subscribing. So with that said, let's get into it. So the E-Flex system by InsideRide is made up of two units, as we've gone through. It's a front unit and a rear unit. The rear unit has a fore-aft motion. It also has a really good side to side. So if I actually take off and I show you this, so this is how much side to side tilt this rear unit has. It's very significant. The front unit, this system here, so let me just put this back on. The front unit has no side-to-side tilt. It has instead a steering mechanism. There's a knob on the front here which will lock that steering out so you can't move it. So then you're just limited to a fore-aft motion. If you undo that knob, you get a steering motion on the front end. Now let's talk about the things that I like about it, and then I'll get into the things that I don't like about it. The thing that I like about it is its form factor. Look how neatly it sits in the space. It was very easy to assemble, and it's really well made. I mean, I like it. There's a few plastic components on it that I talked about in my last video, but other than that, I think it's a really nice, thought out and well engineered components. Now let's get into what I don't like about it and what led to my overall decision. So really, the biggest problem I have is with this whole front unit. The front unit, as I said, has this steering motion, but before we get into the steering motion, this thing is really light. Really want you to understand that that's a really light unit. And because the two systems are independent, obviously they can move around independently of each other. If you have a little bit of OCD like I do, then as a minor point, this thing can sit out of alignment, and you can still get on it and ride it, and you look down and it's out of alignment, and it drove me a little bit mad. So that's just a personal thing. If you have that, that's just something to bear in mind. Now let's get into the real problem that I see with this. The problem that I see with this is, remember I showed you that side-to-side rock? Well, you don't have any side-to-side rock with this front unit locked in. The only time that you'll get a side-to-side rock is if you turn the handlebars. And you can see I'm turning the handlebars and pushing it to the fullest extent just for the video, and then you can see that rock. That means when you're riding, you actually naturally pull on the handlebars a little bit, and it pulls this turning motion, which is very, very strange because it's not intuitive to how you would ride a bike normally, right? So if you end up pulling slightly, you can see that the bike turns in, which is the opposite to what it would be on the road, right? You would lean on the road to turn into a bike. You wouldn't pull your handlebars and it wouldn't turn in a flat plane. So that experience is really strange, and it kicks in immediately you start riding the bike, because you can feel this steering working with this side-to-side motion, and it just is something that, yes, I think you would get used to it, and if you're not pushing hard and not doing anything dramatic on the bike, then I think, yes, you could get used to it. The more concerning is the problem. Remember I said that this front end is really light. Let me just show you something, right? I'm going to rock this side to side, and I don't know whether you can see on the video, I'm going to do a close-up for you, but just rocking it side to side, you can see the amount of motion. This is just front to back. Now let me put a little bit of rock in there, and it just wobbles all over the place. This back end is solid, right? Back end is well planted, but this front end wobbles. Now this is a problem when you get out the saddle, right? So when you get out the saddle, remember I said there's this flat plane turning? So when you get out the saddle to pull on your stroke, you end up turning the bike. So the first thing that happens is you turn yourself in or outward, which transfers the weight, which in my opinion is horrible. I just didn't like that experience at all. The second thing is, if I'm pulling on it, I end up moving the base unit on the floor around because it's not locked down. So getting out the saddle on a climb in Zwift you really have to think about it, and you actually end up fighting the bike because you don't want this side to side turning. Now yes, you could lock the front out and you would just end up, that's a solution, but when it's not, you've got this pull against it, which was very, very off-putting, and this movement on the front. Then the next thing that I'm going to come to is sprinting. Now, to bear in mind, I'm coming from this from a perspective of someone who trains hard and races hard on Zwift. That's what my perspective is. If your perspective is that you're just going to sit on the bike, do some gentle pedaling, one little bit of movement, yes, I don't see major problems here. I think this flat plane, I don't like it. And again, as I said, it negates this wonderful lean that you've got on this rear unit. But it would work, you know, a little bit of weight down there. As soon as you start to put some power through the bike, when you're sprinting, you're going to be putting either left-right pull on the handlebars, and you're also going to be slightly lifting the front end. Not only are you slightly lifting the front end, but anybody who's done a sprint with a kicker by itself will know that you can travel your kicker forward, so you end up bunching up your mat. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about, you know, anything from 700 to 1,000 through 1,200 watts. You're really powering through it. Now, really concerning is this front end, because you end up sprinting, you end up pulling, and how I crashed on this, and yes, I did crash in a sprint, was I ended up pulling, and as I pulled it lifted slightly, which turned it, and it pulled the whole bike, toppled me into the wall. Fortunately, it was into the wall, and then when it lands, you're in this rig, you have to push the bike to get that front unit back in place. So, really struggled with that, and I ended up emailing InsideRide and sharing that information and asking, you know, some advice. Their comments to me was, you know, I need to get used to riding it, and there's nothing wrong with the system. I don't get on with it, and I had to very quickly remove it to do racing because I just couldn't use it for racing. For a little while, I just raced on my normal setup, and then I went back to the Rocker forum, and on the Rocker forum on Facebook, there's the admin there, Chad, has actually done a modification for this front end where he adds a pivot point to allow the rocking motion. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a project. And that's what I've done. So coming up in the future, I've actually taken it all apart. Coming up in the future is what I did to be able to race on this. I won't spoil that right now. So in conclusion, had I known about these behaviors and the dynamics beforehand, I would not have ordered this system. The front end is just too light, and I couldn't use it for racing. I still own this unit, and I have modified it, and I look forward to sharing that with you. Hopefully you found this video interesting. If you have, please think about subscribing, giving me a thumbs up, drop any comments, questions in the feedback. Until next time, keep it safe, keep it rubber side down, and max life out.